Such an auditory exclamation point. And the momentum isn't bad either. Hey crew, I've got the key to that 22 Dodge Charger Scat Pack Widebody HEMI Orange Edition. We are going to take it for a drive, but first, let's check out how it looks on the inside and outside. The first thing to note is that for the 23 model year, the only change is the addition of some last call badges because it's the end of the Charger and Challenger as we know them. For 22, this HEMI Orange package added some fun details like this black stripe running from nose to tail with the orange tracer. There's orange lettering for Scat Pack and a matte black B logo. We still have the hood scoop and mail slot. There are still HID headlights with LED DRLs and turn signals. Those are above functional corner vents and a front air dam. This paint job is called Smoke Show, and I think it looks great with the orange accents. You'll know this is a wide body instantly by the protruding fender flares to wrap over the 305 section front and rear Pirelli P0 all-season tires. You can choose summer tires for a small upcharge. The tires are wrapped on the satin black 20-inch wheels, and within those wheels, with the HEMI Orange package, we find orange painted brake calipers, 6-piston Brembo brakes up front, and 4-piston at the rear. There are more orange accents for the 392 badge on the side. We get gray for the mirror caps and black for the window trim. Stepping back to look at the profile, this is a silhouette we are very familiar with at this point because it's been on the 7th generation Charger since 2011. And yet it still looks cool with a hood bulge and now the unapologetic fender flares. It's got a mean stance. Here at the back is a satin black lip spoiler, the LED taillight bar going across the trunk lid with LED turn signals. Down lower are some functional rear vents. There's a black plastic diffuser with 2 stainless steel exhaust outlets, and over here is a matte black B badge. I think the Charger, especially the Scat Pack Widebody, has aged incredibly well. It still causes a quiver in me when I see it. But my question for you is it time for the Charger to retire? Are you ready? Let me know in the comments, and let's check out the interior. Opening up and looking inside at this upgraded Black Nappa Leather and suede interior with perforated seat inserts, available rear seat heating. With that HEMI Orange package, we get orange contrast stitching there and up high on the injection molding of the door, and here for the leather insert and around the padded leather of your armrest. There are no one-touch windows, hard plastics here and down low. This vehicle has the upgraded 19-speaker Harman Kardon sound system. Stepping in, being careful to duck my head and avoid the low roof line. Behind my own seat at 6 feet tall, I've got just enough knee room. Would be nice to have more. There's a map pocket, good-sized foot pockets to slide my feet under. Thigh support is excellent. Headroom, not so much. So if I'm sitting fully upright, my head's pressed against the glass back here, not the suede-wrapped headliner, so it's gonna get one of these from me. In the middle, we've got air vents. You get 2 USB-A ports. The drive shaft hump is tall, but more importantly, the access alley is narrow. So getting into the middle seat isn't great, and then here, definitely my head is craned forward. So if you don't have a middle passenger, which I would recommend, there is an armrest that comes down with 2 cup holders, leather padding, and underneath that, a bit of storage. Let's check out the front. Listening for the door close noise, which is pretty solid. Smart keyless entry for the front 2 doors. The front seats are heavily bolstered. We've got those slash marks of the Dodge logo. They're heated and ventilated in the front as an upgrade. Power adjustments for the driver and front passenger. Aluminum accented foot pedals. Press this button here to pop up the trunk lid, and it does come all the way up. Inside, we find 16.5 cubic feet of space. The problem with that space is that it's at a recessed height compared to the lip of the trunk, so you're really having to haul things out, and it could hurt your lower back. If you do need more room, then you can fold down those rear seats 60-40. And there is an extra bit of storage here underneath the floor. Handle is built in to close up that trunk lid. The front doors have the same materials as the back. We add auto one-touch windows for the front 2 and power adjusting, not power folding door mirrors, plus 2-position memory for the driver's seat. man, I gotta reach out far for that. Drivers get a heated leather wrapped steering wheel with perforations at 9 and 3. It's very thick in the hands. It's got a flat bottom here. The paddles are so upsetting because they're just these half little paddles here and the travel isn't very much. There are 2 analog gauges for the tach and speedo, and in the middle is a reconfigurable TFT display. Up on the dashboard, there is no head-up display. We have injection molding with more orange stitching and accenting for the orange of the 392. There's matte carbon fiber trim around the gauge cluster and this 8.4-inch Uconnect 4 software infotainment system. It's the older display, but they have made it a bit quicker, and it is still easy to use. It has wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Beneath the screen is a volume knob, tuner, and HVAC controls, DC outlet there, slot for your phone, not a wireless charging pad. Matte carbon fiber trim with a key slot is bordering the gear selector with a shift boot and orange stitching. Slide this back for cup holders. Under the leather-topped and padded console, we have a decent bit of storage when you remove this with a DC outlet and 2 USB-A ports. Visibility is decent. That back pillar is a blind spot. Thankfully, we've got standard blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic. This cabin's a bit of a mixed bag, with rear passenger room not being as much as I would like, some harder plastics in visible spots, and the technology having kind of run its course. But it does have high points, like the orange stitching, like these Nappa leather and suede seats, which are very comfortable, and like this very cool, sporty carbon fiber trim. It's certainly not an insult even in the 23 model year. And now it's time to take the Scat Pack Widebody for a drive. All right, let's fire it up. Woo! How is that for a greeting? For you and everyone in a half-mile radius. Our drive mode, selected here, gives us several different options to choose from. We've got auto, custom, where you can go in here and with these digital toggles, customize different categories like the transmission response, the traction control, the steering, and the suspension, and then sport and track. Let's begin in auto, and then as we pull back on the gear selector to go into reverse, it will bring up a screen filling, but ultimately unsatisfying and low resolution backup camera. That's what it is. Oh, and before we leave, I didn't have to disengage it, but the e-brake is a truck style push brake. We're still using that all these years later. Amazing. We do have trajectory lines, that's nice. And it's down into drive. And we will kick things off, as per usual, with a turning radius test. Fully cranked. Wow. Those 305 section front tires turn very well in their wheel arches to pivot around this Charger Scat Pack pretty tidily. Turn signal sound. It's so very traditional and quite loud. Oh, parking sensor for something. Now for the world famous horn test. Pretty annoying. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be honked at by that. And actually, as the honker, I wouldn't want to do that very often either. Thankfully, you shouldn't actually have to honk at people, because if you just do that, it'll scare them half to death. What is making that noise? Well, it's a 6.4 liter naturally aspirated HEMI V8 that makes 485 horsepower and 475 pound-feet of torque. That is routed to just the rear tires via an 8-speed torque converter automatic transmission. And the gear changes from that 8-speed are fairly imperceptible. They happen cleanly in the background. And the brake pedal has some sharpness up front, but then you can smoothly decelerate further into that pedal. The throttle response here in auto is what I would call perfect. You have the responsiveness you want, but then it's not overzealous as you casually make your way up to speed, which is not an issue at all for this car. 485 horsepower. In today's age of 500 plus horsepower sports sedans, doesn't sound like an insane amount of power, but it's extraordinarily usable. I love this power figure and this motor in this car because it just has that versatility. It's not scary to drive, but it has all the momentum you need at just a slight additional bit of poke to that throttle. And then the ride quality from these adaptive dampers is good. It is firm, so you do kind of jostle over those bumps, but the actual imperfections in the road don't jar you as the driver. And I wonder how much of that is the fact that these chairs are so thickly padded that how could those imperfections make their way through all of that padding to upset you? Now, while I did say that this power is easy to modulate, if it's still too much for you, then at any point in time, you can hit the Eco button here in Auto, and that's going to dull throttle response by a lot and turn this into a pussycat of a daily driver. But that can get boring. So let's see the real world 0 to 60 for the Scat Pack Widebody. For that, I've got my race box set up here. I'm going to move to the Sport Drive mode, and under Race Options, choose Launch Control, where you can set your RPM for launch. I'll keep it modest. Hit Activate Launch Control. Hold my foot on the brake, pin the throttle, let go of the brake, still spun the tires. Oh, that noise! 4.6, and almost killed a bird. Oh my gosh. 4.67 seconds to 60. Not as quick as I've seen in this car. I got it down to 4.4, but that's with a lot of heat in the tires. This is a real world 0 to 60 test, so 4.6 is probably what you can expect. And I've messed with this before. Setting the launch any higher in terms of the RPMs, you're just gonna sit there and roast rubber. So keep it to 2,000. And let's move back to auto. Let that HEMI V8 go on holiday at a low murmur in the background. And listening for the NVH level at these speeds. It is not bad at all. I mean, you get a little of a HEMI and a faint bit of wind noise, but the cabin volume is low. You could easily have a conversation with your passengers and not have to raise your voices a lot, at least unless the driver was having fun with the throttle. And the ride is settled in, as long as there are not some heavy grooves on the road, because tram lining does happen in this vehicle. So those 305s up front just catch in and pull you wherever the road takes you. You could daily drive this thing without an issue. And then when duty calls and you go back into sport and you maybe pull up the performance pages just to watch yourself be awesome, what happens then when you put your foot down? That's all I feel like saying every time I do that. The HEMI is fully enveloping. It is an intoxicating sound. This motor, in the variety of applications Dodge uses it, or FCA, Stellantis, whatever they're called now. In the Wrangler 392, in this, it's like, it's always, oh, such a rush. Such an auditory exclamation point. And the momentum isn't bad either. Yeah, this thing fully rips. And with that wide stance, it feels very stable while doing it. And the torque converter automatic has no problem downshifting at a moment's notice to just send you surging forward. And we do have manual mode to move the selector over and use the stubby little half paddles. Why are they so small? That facilitates pretty quick shifts. I mean, yeah, really very quick for a torque converter auto. Oh my gosh, that noise, guys. Is incredible. Man, those brakes are solid too. I just got on the pedal and it stopped us fully right away. Okay, I'll admit a little bit of me wants the supercharger one of the Hellcat. But pure V8, this is better than my Blackwing. That I just have to admit. As far as handling is concerned, in sport mode, those dampers have stiffened up. With the wide body package, we've got these beefy sway bars front and rear. And while this never feels like a featherweight, the Scat Pack doesn't mind changing direction. And once again, those brakes are tenacious. And in sport drive mode, the steering has greater heft to it, and though it's a bit mysterious on center, as you add lock, the tires do start talking to you. It powers nicely out of corners. While these are all season tires, they're so wide that there's ample grip at our disposal. Well, that guy's on it. This is just a really well-sorted package. They've been doing this for so long that they've worked out all the kinks. This motor is fantastic. The transmission is paired nicely to it. The brakes are stout. The steering is complementary. The sway bars are beefy. Do a good job containing this body and cutting out some of the float that would just otherwise be inherent for something this bloated. And all the while, there is that insatiable soundtrack to satisfy you, whether you're going quick through a curve or not. You know what it is with the Scat Pack? It's that all of those elements I mentioned are just perfectly proportioned. I love the Hellcat, desperately. But it's just too much motor to confidently do things like this. But the Scat Pack doesn't terrify you to get on throttle, even with traction turned off. It does, however, feel way too wide for these roads. And that is going to lead me to my MilesPerHr word of the day, which usually is an actual word, and I suppose today is as well. But this is not like a Merriam-Webster look this one up. This is more of a position in football. It's the linebacker, who is always very burly and powerful, but also filled with poise, because that linebacker has to stop both the pass and the rush. They've got to be able to move. And I couldn't help but think of that position when driving this Charger Scat Pack Widebody. It's got all this muscle. It looks terrifying, but it also can really move. Now, what is a linebacker of a sports sedan going to cost you? Well, before we get into pricing and competition, let's go over the top speed and fuel economy. Top speed for the Scat Pack Widebody is 175 miles per hour, and I believe every mile of that per hour. And the fuel economy is 15 mpg in the city, 24 on the highway, and 18 combined, which is not all that bad for an NA V8. The starting figure for the narrow body Scat Pack is about $53,000, and if you want the wide body, it is $50,300, and if you want the wide body, it is $56,300 buckaroos. This one is tested with that HEMI orange package and some other upgrades. It's a little under 65 grand. Now, how else might you spend your $50,000 to $60,000 on a four-door sports sedan? We have vehicles like the Kia Stinger GT2, which the Stinger, like the Charger, is going to be discontinued for the 23 model year, so keep that in mind. It starts at $53,000 for the GT2. It makes 368 horsepower, gets to 60 in 4.6 seconds, and has fuel economy of 20 combined. And there's also the BMW M340i, which in rear drive form starts at $57,000, makes 383 horsepower, gets to 60 in a quick 4.1 seconds, all while managing fuel economy of 26 combined. Another important note, both the Stinger and that M340i are offered in all-wheel drive, while the Charger is a rear drive only affair. There it is. Among those options, I'd have to rule out the Stinger pretty quickly, because while it looks cool on the outside and it is fun to drive, the interior is a bit of a letdown, and the package just doesn't excite me nearly as much as this and the M340i. That BMW is a very good sports sedan. It's a truly great sports sedan, and it does have this aura of perhaps maturity and office class life to it that is going to be appealing to some people, and the technology is more sophisticated than in this vehicle. The performance is just awesome. But call it a bit of nostalgia, call it a bit of infatuation with American muscle. Now that I own the CT5e Blackwing, I guess I love that product even more. It gives me this enamor for all the vehicles that are like it, and the Charger Scat Pack not only has incredible performance, not only looks so freaking cool on the outside, the tech works well enough. The interior is comfortable enough. It's got sporty-ish touches. The rear seat headroom is tight. I think it's worth the money, and even at the as-tested $64,600, whatever it costs, it's worth that to me. And I'd probably, at this moment in time, choose this over that great M340i. But you know what? Ask me tomorrow and I might change my mind. They're both so good. The point is, this is a knockout, and I will very much miss when you can't go into a dealership and buy one. Which would you guys choose? Would you go Kia Stinger GT2, BMW M340i, Dodge Charger Scat Pack Widebody? Let me know in the comments, and I hope you've enjoyed this POV drive review. If you did, please like, comment, and share the video. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell to get notified, and I'll see you next time.